to make it today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the July DAP meeting for Bethesda. The meeting is being recorded. We have one item for today, which is Montgomery Pearl. This is the first time we're seeing the project. It's in the sketch plan phase. We had sent around the memo last week, giving sort of the skinny about the proposal. It is a large redevelopment property along Montgomery Avenue with Pearl Street dividing it. And Pearl Street is one of the few shared streets in Bethesda, and the applicant, before coming through the design advisory panel process, has met with staff several times, as well as Montgomery County Department of Transportation staff, to determine the feel of the shared street, as well as the bicycle lanes along Montgomery Avenue. And in the massing form, I think one of the things that staff has asked the applicant to focus on is the relationship of the public open space and how it's spread throughout the site, and also how that relates to the Capitol Crescent Trail, which is at the southern edge of the property. And we've outlined all of this in our staff memo, but because it is such a large redevelopment, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the applicant now to really walk us through the details.
Thank you, Grace. I'll just make some introductions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the architect. So Permark Development owns the property, and as Grace said, we've met with staff several times on this project. We're really excited about it. It's going to be a game changer for this area of Bethesda. With me from Permark are Pete McLaughlin and Patrick Farquhar, and then Pat LeVay from MHD, and then we have our BKV team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I'd just like to, my name is Jack Borman. I'm the senior design partner and head of our development group at BKV, and we office in Georgetown. And thank you for having us here today. And I'd like to just introduce our design team. Ben, do you want to?
Yeah, Benjamin Yantz, senior project manager.
Okay.
Willie Bermudez, I'm the design partner also.
Yeah.
And John Nelson, head of landscape design.
And we first off, this is a fantastic site, and it's sort of a site that connects. And so for us, we see this unique opportunity to create an extension of the neighborhood, something that's different in scale from Wisconsin as you move along Montgomery. Clearly, it's also very unique because we have three corridors. We have Montgomery, we have the pedestrian, the Capitol Crescent Trail, and the Purple Line. And all of that is sort of our neighbors, our edges from a design standpoint. So for us, that's a huge opportunity and a huge goal to connect that and to make it work even better. I think the other aspect that's very important is that we look at this site really as an opportunity to develop three different buildings, not just one building, but to develop a fabric that really works from the pedestrian scale and the massing scale, and also, most importantly, creates a range of rental opportunity for the residents. And so, we have different building heights, and we have a street, and we also have a pedestrian cut through that divides it into the third parcel. Obviously, we have a neighborhood that needs some love. I mean, needs a upbringing to where Bethesda's been going and where it wants to go, and that really creates this opportunity to go from a low density to a mid-level density neighborhood that has a strong residential and a strong ground level and a strong connector to the corridors. That's really very much depicted by my last slide, which is really to talk about how these three buildings are going to fulfill the design goals that we see outlined here for this site. And I'd like to turn it over to my design team.
Thanks. This is a zoning contextual diagram showing the tapering of heights from Wisconsin Avenue. The central building has a 145-foot maximum height for part of it, then it steps down to 120. The east building at 120 as well. The west building has a height restriction. Property units. Rob can speak to that further as needed.
It's roughly 55.
Yeah, 52 and a half feet. Yeah. I'm going to turn it over to John to talk about the framework of the site plan in the open space.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that Jack sort of touched upon, it's really from a kind of a site plan sort of framework diagram from the kind of public realm and urban experience. We really focus on the kind of creating the legibility of, a well-connected public realm, really kind of looking at strengthening that connection from Montgomery Avenue throughout the development to these kind of key, urban anchors at the sort of that create these gateway points at the Capitol Crescent Trail. So you kind of see between the West Building and Central, we've extended, really kind of enhanced Pearl Street. So you get that kind of strong connection down that opens up towards the plaza. There'll be a focal point at the end of it. And then we're kind of looking at like easing the grades and tying into the existing ramp. So we get kind of really kind of active destination plaza there. And it really kind of builds on this kind of overall sense of place that we're trying to create for the overall development. And then between the East and Central building, we have a very strong kind of through connection where that we would, again, work with the levels. It's slightly elevated and kind of terraces down. So you have more of a kind of terrace plaza there that would kind of have a flush connection, or you'll see on some of the sections that we're going to go to. But that again creates another kind of activation. And really, the building starts to really kind of open up to the Capitol Crescent Trail in terms of its overall framework, but also kind of the active uses of the building below, which we'll talk about. The other thing in terms of really just that experience along Montgomery Avenue, we're working with the county plans and recommendations to have a kind of floating bus stop on the corner of Pearl and Montgomery Avenue. And we prioritize pedestrian safety and experience by having a kind of, a long sort of uninterrupted two-way bike lane. And then we were introducing parallel parking on the kind of Montgomery side where there would be kind of potential drop-offs at the building entry. And then obviously where we have the kind of, to align with the kind of architecture as well, where you have the cut-throughs, we're kind of having sort of gateway elements within the public realm, maybe the seating to kind of frame this kind of nodes along Montgomery.
Willie,
Yeah.
you want to speak to the massing?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, this is a very challenging site, but we love like that kind of challenge, especially with the ball plane, right? I mean, like this 45-degree plane that we have like on the south side. I mean, kind of like gave us like the opportunity to think about like with this collection of buildings and like the opportunity of creating like a more biophilic design. I mean, so we are seeing this like as an opportunity to give like a terraces to a lot of units in these buildings, right? So that's why, I mean, we started like stepping the building and cascading like these terraces down to the trail, and pretty much creating the design itself like by following like these design guidelines, right? Same thing with the Montgomery elevation. I mean, like all these setback requirements kind of like gave us like the vision to create like a terracing along the Montgomery Avenue, and also like start like breaking up like these tree masses, like and really like kind of like articulating like the main corners of the building according to our design program.
Yeah, I think this image really shows well the urban presence along Montgomery Avenue with the taper down to the trail, really opening up to the trail. And then you can see here the proposed site plan. And it touches on a lot of the things John spoke about with the pedestrian experience along Montgomery Avenue and the bike lane as well. That's an extension of the DOT design that is being implemented, including the bus station
And I'd like to also add the adding units along there creates
Mhm.
a real walkable residential feeling for the character, which differentiates itself from what you have as you go further towards Wisconsin.
That's right. We're trying to activate the street by adding those walk-up units.
And then John, if you want to just weigh in a little bit more on the shared street at Pearl Street and the
Yeah, so
third
we're
block.
proposing, I think the next slide sort of touches on it a little bit, but I can kind of talk to this as well. But we're proposing a 50-foot width shared street. The actual the total width, 20-foot wide for the kind of vehicular traffic. Wouldn't have, it'd be a flush curb condition. We're thinking on other sort of shared surfacings that I've done that we'd have a kind of inset from the 20 feet that would kind of be a contrasting band. So that kind of tells traffic, you know, it sets that parameter from a kind of visual point, as well as kind of find some pedestrian where their pathway might be. We're having a turning circle at the end, so if cars do sort of go down there, there's an opportunity for them to turn around and then go back up. We've really created that kind of, I think there's a special opportunity with the levels. What we're proposing to do is cut the ramp. You can see it's slightly shortened from what's there today, and then propose the opportunity for these kind of a plaza there with some kind of monument steps that would create just kind of a nice sort of link towards the Capitol Trail, but also can provide this kind of seating element that people can kind of look back down over the plaza that could be kind of activated for different events. We've also kind of looking at the levels as well and kind of wrapping that plaza. You can see with some steps further sort of wraps around the building to kind of, you know, create kind of a nice relationship between the building and the trail, just at that sort of key juncture.
And the sections that we're going to look at in a bit also will show that relationship. The topography here is challenging because you've got streets that are heading down an elevation. You've got the trail at yet another elevation, and then that's also changing as well.
And these are just some kind of precedent images just to show what we're kind of thinking about in terms of, you know, Confeel potential program. So I'll just pick up on a few. The ones on the left really sort of have that kind of, you know, that sort of paving pattern that we talked about, that kind of nice pedestrian experience for the shared street. Leading down to number 2 with these kind of monument steps. Could be that cool feature we talked about. Number 4 with that kind of terrace park. The sort of integrating a ramp that comes down steps and, you know, sort of some future kind of seating elements there that kind of tie in with some of the lower building potential uses. And then these kind of gateway elements along Montgomery to kind of activate that streetscape as well. And then we're working with the guidelines for the Bethesda down streets to make sure that we're kind of, you know, adhering to all the correct bits, create that kind of legible public ramp Bethesda.
Yeah. We'll get to that as well. We've got a little more information on that in just a minute.
These are just kind of our preliminary open space calculations to show that we're meeting that kind of 10% requirement. You can see that we're not sort of at the moment, we haven't included the shared street, the monument steps that's currently outside. So I've just created that kind of, you know, that would obviously, that's something that gets included would be increasing that open space requirement. But we're meeting the 10%.
We do have both downtown mixed-use street and shared street criteria. And even with the new bike lane and loading island for the bus stop, we're still able to comply with the build to line on Montgomery Avenue. The shared street does allow for the minimum pedestrian through zone. And then as you'll see in some, you saw in the site plan and we'll see in some renderings in just a minute, it allows also for street trees on each side and et cetera. So I'll just jump right into that. You can see here with the 50-foot right of way, we have compliance with the pedestrian requirements, street trees, limited vehicular traffic is anticipated here.
And even though, I mean, this is more like a massing exercise, but we're starting to see like to distinguish between like the glazing elements and the solid exterior walls on these buildings. And that's why, I mean, we kind of like showing these type of diagrams.
And also there's a podium sense to the overall massing, and then there's the upper building that's set back from that. So it creates this layering that helps the scale at the street.
And then more of a, street level view. You can see at the end the steps. Pearl Street is heading down in grade. You can see right along here. It heads down about 4 to 5 feet, but then the trail is back up. So that's where we've proposed the monumental steps as a node and for trail access. It's the closer up view. Right here, you can see the ramp that has been built, and then we're proposing some additional steps next to just to help with some of the topography.
As we connect to the trail.
Yeah. And then a view back up Pearl Street from the monumental steps. So somebody's coming off of the trail. John or Willie, was there anything you wanted to add?
As Jack mentioned, I mean, like the sense of establishing a podium and kind of like setting back the building a little bit, like just to create that break of scale, like especially with the taller building, right? The building on the left, I mean, like it's a lower building by default, and what we're trying to do with that one is to create more like a ins and outs with balconies. I mean, like we haven't done it completely with these passing, but like the units that we're proposing, I mean, like they're pretty deep, so that gives us the opportunity to kind of like create like recessed balconies at some point. So this is going to be like very activated facade at some point.
So a couple things to get into on the sections, both the central and, well, the central building here has a 4-story base. I know it looks 2 stories here. The health club has double height floors for each level. There is 4 stories of residential within the base, and then you can see the tower above and the way it steps back, the 45-degree line from the south property line. You can also see, here the trail is slightly below our slab because, again, we've got the entrance at Montgomery Avenue, and then there is these grade changes that we've been talking about. And that will show up more and more as we progress down the site. So this is just beyond Pearl Street. And then we get more to the middle portion of the central building. You can see we do have the amenity deck with the residential tower above. You can see in the distance the terracing as well on the leg. And then here, grade is heading down even more. Until we get to really the east building where grade is a full story below. What that actually allows us to do is also have residential units in this area that face.
So we're seeing those units as the double story units that actually activate also the trail side.
Exactly, yeah. And then you can see in the middle of the east building, we are planning for bike connectivity directly from the building to the trail. And we would expect this at the corner of the central building as well, because grade allows where that first level down, that's essentially the point where these meet, is right at the through block. And so we can have direct access for residences, for a nice bike entrance. So there's direct access to the trail for various recreation types. and really helps activate that side of the building with a different feel from Montgomery Avenue. Here's a section through the mid-block connector. You can see how, we're up at, almost a full story above at grade, and then we have a series of terraces down with some visioning here until we meet the elevation of the trail. Did want to go back to Pearl Street. Just this is looking the other way. You can really see here the way the street heads down in elevation. And we're actually proposing raising it a couple feet just to help soften that connection to the trail.
It's to reduce the amount of steps, but also
Exactly.
to kind of cut around that
Right.
as well. Then create a sort of more of a plaza destination.
And then, of course, you see here the building height of the west building is deed restricted. But that is a plan to be a residential building. So there's opportunities still for really nice activation. John and Willie will talk about some of the precedents.
Yeah, I kind of sort of touched upon, but just the use of different paving, contrasting back, banding as a kind of visual indication to kind of separate pedestrians as well as vehicles, creating that kind of pedestrian orientated street for Pearl. And these are just some of the kind of components that we're looking at, kind of suppressing energy. Same with the kind of steps. I think one thing the plan does quite well is that in terms of the outdoor program, the kind of plaza at the end of Pearl, where you'd have these steps as that kind of urban feel. It could be a bit more active, flexible for potential events or something. Whereas it complements the use for the kind of terrace part, where it could be a little bit more passive, more pedestrian oriented, where people walk along the trail and they have a moment to stop and relax. And it's a bit more kind of a passive space. So I think there's complementary uses that work quite well together as well. So this kind of, again, look and feel of these sort of these integrated ramps and steps and how they can kind of open up, create new moments, whether they're smaller seating moments or kind of larger elements that can kind of look into plaza spaces. It's really trying to create a sense of place and activation. So it's kind of public realm element.
So then Willie and I will talk about some of the bulk reduction strategies we're using. That's an important component of the downtown plan. Tower step back, especially along Montgomery Avenue. You can see the way we've got the 4-story base, and then we have a series of step backs and some associated visioning.
At the same time, I mean, like we are trying to reinforce like these corners, right? So in those areas, we thinking like that these fabrics could actually come down to the ground. I mean, like even on Pearl and Montgomery, I mean, like we still like keeping the setback after the 4 stories, but I mean that would be like as a tower element regardless. And these are just like visual images right now. I mean, like something to brainstorm ideas. I mean, we're not committed to anything at this point, but we're committed to quality materials for sure, and glazing and rain screen materials that actually provide a lot of like biophilic containing also.
Limiting tower floor plates, varying tower heights. Those are some strategies identified in the downtown plan, and you can see that here. Partially, I mean, the zoning criteria really gives us a lot of cues that we can follow, both on the maximum height and from the setback. But it really does lend itself to some interesting geometry and varying heights.
That's right, and also like this is going to provide us with with that diversity of like unit types that we want to achieve, like in among these three buildings, right?
And you also see that here using unique geometry, and it gives, you know, the residential terrace opportunities are really quite nice. The biophilic element that Willie mentioned earlier. And then we did want to talk a little bit about the through block connection and just some visioning there. We do really see this as a strong pathway through the site.
Something that complements also like the architecture of the two buildings, right? I mean, we've done it like in this project in Philadelphia, the lower corner. I mean, it's not only a bridge, but it's a design element that actually like just connects like the building like in a through manner. And we also like want to emphasize like these recesses that we apply like to the entry corners, where we actually cantilever a little bit like the floor above, and giving us like the opportunity of like just creating like these striking moments like at the arrival of the spaces.
And then just at the end of that through block.
Yeah, again, so some precedents to show how that kind of this area sort of has a more of a green kind of park-like feel. We're thinking integrating that kind of that strand comes through the steps and the ramp, and then some seating areas at the bottom, and then got the kind of bike storage there as well. So people coming from the trail, I think they create quite a nice kind of lower floor activation for that space as well. And then people coming from the trail, so that becomes another kind of significant kind of node. I think the gateway element for the trail, which is a benefit to the overall design.
And
Thank you
then,
very much.
yeah, that's our presentation.
I
Thank you.
wanted to make a couple comments real quick, and we could have started off with saying that the project itself has approximately 580 residential, 77,000 square feet of commercial, of which the bulk of that is the health and wellness facility, which will be located in the central building. And then with respect to Pearl Street, while the sector plan recommends the abandonment of Pearl Street after many meetings with DOT, they made it clear that they're interested in the abandonment, accomplish the objectives with the shared street. So approximately 580 over the spread out through the 3 days.
Can you highlight where you're loading parking entries? And I'm assuming that the parking is all connected under 3 blocks or 3 buildings.
Is it?
Is it?
No, it is not.
Okay. So
I will start at the east building. We are proposing parking entrance and exit for the east building off Montgomery Avenue with loading at the front end of the through block. For central, we have loading as well, and then entrance exit. And
a question, is
Yeah.
the entrance exit, that's parking for residents as well as for health and wellness club? Is that one entry?
one entry for both. But we are proposing a second exit only, not an entrance, exit only out Pearl Street because of the load, the parking load because of the health club.
Yeah.
Is significant. And then the west building is a small footprint. We are proposing some parking access at the end of Pearl Street around the corner with loading as well. There's an existing parking structure and loading dock for a hotel back there. And so that's our approach. And Rob can speak a little bit more to the transportation work that, we have had a transportation consultant involved advising on traffic load and things like that.
I think another thing to emphasize is the traffic circulation currently. As you know, Montgomery is east, west. The only way to get west, absent that Pearl Street egress, is going almost a mile around the block. If anyone has driven highway, school is.
Hey, Pat, I'm having a really hard time hearing Pat Harris. And I
Sorry.
want to hear Pat Harris.
Thank you, Robert. I was saying that the traffic circulation in the one street makes it difficult to get westbound from the health club. And that especially in the mornings when school's in session, East West Highway gets really jammed up. So that was the thinking behind this.
So West Building loading, I see, can only be accessed through that shared street.
Yes.
And
No, and then there's an expanded street at the end of it. Is that for, to accommodate turning radius?
Right here?
Yep.
There's a parking entrance and a loading. There's a parking garage. And then a hotel. So there's just a lot going on in the existing condition back there. I should point out the other reason that we had not looked at connecting the parking. This through block is a sewer easement. Right. So yeah, water and sewer.
okay. Oh,
And then of course Pearl Street, since DOT did not support abandonment. Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
There's cost per.
and you mentioned something about West Building height being restricted by the existing deed. That's why it's not as tall as the other ones.
That's right.
And what are the access points to
Soft.
what are access points coming out of the building towards, for instance, at the terminus of Pearl Street,
So
like pedestrian access points?
pedestrian access points coming out of the building, we really expect the through block for the central building just because of the because we can come out at the lower level based on the topography. And so we were not anticipating right now direct pedestrian access here.
I think another reason is because it's a club, health and wellness club on the first and second floor. And obviously you need to have a central point of access. Otherwise people will be sneaking in the back door.
Right.
This is a health club that's not tied to just residence use. It's a separate independent retail anchor, right? It's not just for that.
That's right.
So before we get into comments, Robert put in the chat, he asked me to give a summary of the recommendations from the sector plan and the design guidelines for Pearl Street, and just for the panel's understanding. The sector plan focuses on the Pearl District as an emerging center, and it asks redevelopment to focus on improving streetscape along Montgomery Avenue to incentivize retail, and it focuses on Pearl Street becoming more of a main street, as well as improving connections to the CCT and a major connection at Pearl Street and the CCT as well. Let's see if there's any highlights. And it talks about creating a new recreational park and other activities, but that is actually planned more east on Montgomery Avenue, and Parks Department is actively pursuing that. But there is a proposed through block connection, a sector plan one along the eastern portion of the property. They are showing it here more mid-block, and then the major CCT connection at Pearl Street.
Wait, where's
Thank you.
between what?
The through block connection, so in the sector plan, they sort of show these through block connections more visionary.
Okay.
It doesn't always align with redevelopment, but it would have been closer to here to help create connections up to East West Highway and BCC. Does that help, Robert?
Thank you very much, Grace, for that. Is there any guidance along the setbacks regarding the trail frontage in the guidelines?
There are not specific setbacks. They provided, maximum heights, I think, of 145 But it does acknowledge that there is the single family residences in the area and to provide height and density that's compatible with that.
They touched on this in the sections, but it's important to note that at the mid-block connection, from that point going west, the trail starts ramping up. And so that's been a real challenge to try to figure out how not to make it seem like a barrier, but somehow integrate that into the design.
It's been a real challenge to understand in the drawings, and that's
Yes.
having benefited from like many meetings with you all and trying to still like review it and explain.
I almost
It's
feel like we
very
need a real
difficult-
model of the back.
I would agree.
But-
Yeah, something. Yeah.
We can go do a site visit. It's been built.
Yeah, we could.
Well, in relation to that, I realized kind of for the first time when you show the sections through these buildings from the central building down to the east building. I know the east building goes down a floor trail. But when you're looking at the central building, starting basically at the notch, you're about on that southern elevation, you're about a half floor up at the first floor.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And then by the time you're at the passage, you're almost a floor up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you lower the slab at least on the notch so that it's basically at grade? I know it's, you're showing a
Can
flat
someone,
slab.
can someone
essentially.
point to that on the plan? Paul, I'm having a hard time following you. Where? Oh, right there.
Yeah, the slab on the section, when you look at the section of the central building, maybe you go to that.
Yeah.
You're looking at one large flat slab, right there. Yet, no, that one, yeah, that one. Yet you're already, almost a half a floor above the trail. And then when you look down to the next section, you're almost a complete floor now above the trail. And I'm just wondering, I know it's nice to have one slab without an adjustment in the section, but this is I think there might be some benefit somehow of trying to maybe relate the southern edge more to the trail. And if it came down essentially a half a floor, the slab may be broken and came down a half a floor, you would almost be at the trail a good portion of that elevation. I just wonder if there's a relationship that could be taken advantage of there if you did something like that. I know it's more expensive to break a slab, but in this case, when you're at the trail, most of that trail you're going to be looking at the parking, essentially at the elevation of the parking. And so I just wonder if that might be an option of maybe trying to do that.
There's certainly, I'm going to go back to the site plan for just a moment.
Yeah, we're showing screening along that edge as well.
Because at this area of the central building, there is the opportunity for direct slab access. And so we certainly were intending to do something there. We had obviously discussed bike access in a really nice bike facility. But that is part of the challenge with everything that's going on with the topography, for sure.
Can I ask a question about Pearl Street grade? Are we locked into that Pearl Street grade that you're showing that slopes down from Montgomery Avenue because of the access to the hotel parking
Look,
and
yes.
service? Are we locked into Pearl Street grade?
Yeah, we're actually proposing raising it a couple feet.
Can we
but
raise it? Can we raise it more?
We think that would present challenges getting to the adjacent buildings.
Have you guys looked at that? Yeah.
We've studied it. I mean, certainly we could take another dive at it.
So that Pearl Street is a public easement, access easement? It's not is it a public street or is it your street with a public easement?
No, it's a public street.
Public street. But
It's a
you would be able,
public street, and at
the same
turn-
thing. I mean, technically, it's the same.
it's a public
But
street.
it's a public
Okay.
street.
The reason I'm asking, well, so I I could start if you want, Grace and Paul, with some observations. I think a 3D virtual model of the trail frontage would be super helpful to everybody, because it is quite complicated. And I think the things that have jumped out to me so far is that I think that the buildings will have good potential. I like the way you're going on the buildings above. My largest concerns are the ground plane. I think there's a huge opportunity on this site to connect on the backside, on the trail side, to connect the Pearl Street and I don't know what you're calling the mid block, but the half street there, at least east to west through that portion, a little more with a little bigger setback would be a wonderful, wonderful. Right now, everything feels a little bit disparate and disconnected at the ground plane. I don't know if other folks feel the same way, but I think there's a real opportunity to have a public connection around there that would offer all kinds of potential community connections, which the pinching currently seems to discourage and create two separate areas that are not linked together. And I know density and FAR and economic value and all of that, but I think it would actually benefit the economics of the project if you could design a beautiful public realm that connected Pearl and the mid-block street. I'm confident this team can do nice buildings above. I'm just looking at the ground plane in the public realm and having that reaction. I was wondering why you had to drive through, but now I know you have a hotel connection to the west, which is why you have to do the little, I'm not even sure what that's called, but the extension off the cul-de-sac to the parking area, which is tough. But just to that point of, could you connect those two termini a little more strongly in a pedestrian way to the south of the Health and Wellness Club? I think it would open up all kinds of opportunities. And it doesn't have to be a huge setback, but just extending what you have to the east across would be it would create a wonderful public space in this neighborhood. That's just my first thought. I'm curious to get your reactions.
I mean, we can take a look at the grading again and see how it kind of works. But I think one of the biggest challenges, and to your point that, we did want to make it feel connected, and we felt that, by having the kind of 3-block connection and the PAL, that the actual trail itself becomes that part of the public realm. It provides that kind of connection. It's not just the development. It's actually by having these kind of two terminuses and working with the levels that they create that kind of flush, accessible transition onto the trail, and that kind of bleeds into it. The issue I think we are having, you can kind of see the screening with that kind of sits, we were trying to position building uses adjacencies next to these spaces to create that activation, to create kind of flexible spaces that can be easily programmed. We'll kind of see, same materials, so that kind of legibility, flexible spaces for program.
Is it a density issue for you in terms of the residential, or is it a fitness center metric that you have to hit a certain program area and span in the health club that's forcing you so tight? Because you could add a little more above, I think. So I'm just curious, do other folks feel the same way? I think there's a huge opportunity here that's being missed on the public realm side. And I think it would benefit your project. Your character is the Pearl side, not the Montgomery side.
Robert, thanks for pointing that out. I just want to add some context. When staff looked at the application too, there was a similar question raised about, that exhibit that you have, the 10% open space. If you can pull that up real quick, I think it puts some of these issues in with some clarity, that these spaces that you are sort of allocating to be public spaces, unless they are really connected in the back, start to become these 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot wide strips of land. And in some places, there is very good porosity. Like at the Terrace Park, it sounds like you're basically opening up right at grade, but then these other sort of widgets that are going beyond the two central spaces are unclear what the quality of that is and what that's
exactly.
So I just wanted to add that to Robert's comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just curious because in my opinion, you could push some density up a little bit in the middle. There looks like there's area for it. So if it's about the density, I just, again, I'm just seeing an opportunity to connect those spaces and have a bigger idea at the south side here.
I mean, I do agree with Robert on that, just sort of integrating those two spaces because I think the urban plaza can be an extension to what the residents will already receive at the Terrace Park. So I think the ability to be able to get to the other side in a more welcoming and integrated way, I think that would definitely add a lot to the project. And also, like, what are the programming elements that actually go into those spaces? I was looking for more information on that, and I couldn't understand that outside of circulation. How are those spaces being activated? I mean, I think the images are really strong and they speak a lot to the intent, but just trying to see how it actually gets implemented in these spaces. I think that's the information that would be helpful to have.
It feels a little congested right at that point where that building almost, touches the property line, red.
Yeah.
And also, there are high-end health clubs all around DC. There is on Equinox and Bethesda. One thing they don't have is dedicated outdoor space that could differentiate them from others like that. Yes, there's Capitol Crescent Trail, but I use Capitol Crescent Trail and it gets congested as well with bikes and people running on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an excellent idea to have a health club, especially at the ground level. But I think it will be even better for that tenant to have their own dedicated space where they could have classes outdoor that are close to.
Yes.
Do have
Great
dedicated outdoor space.
Elevated is one, but they also have. I just
Even if some of it were partially covered, it would be okay, right? I mean, just to. Yeah.
That actually, like, that area is right now destination retail. Right? So people have to know why they're going.
Right.
And if there are other health clubs in Bethesda, and I know there are, I've been to all of them, none of them have a nice outdoor space that's would be a huge attraction for that tenant.
So one thing I'll mention is, and Ben, if you could go to a different slide, maybe the site plan. So the health club has a more than a half-acre outdoor space dedicated to them upstairs. I think the issue with outdoor space and we'd have to talk to the actual health club operator, but it's just control and it's they want to. It's more complicated. I understand exactly what you're saying, but they will have, I think it's 25,000 square feet of outdoor space.
Oh, okay.
And it's dedicated to them. The other thing I would mention is, and Ben, if you go to a site plan, while we do have the two different open spaces, they are connected by what will be an unbelievable Capitol Crescent Trail. It's going to be 12 feet wide with another foot on each side. So they are connected. There is that, and we don't disagree. It's like a 70-foot separation, and it's kind of shown as green. And part of our challenge is part of that is not our property.
Yeah.
And DOT has told us.
Where is that? Can you show that?
Yeah, the backside of the central building.
That's not your property?
Part of it is not.
Okay.
It's DOT, or I guess, is it MTA? MTA.
It's a maintenance easement for MTA or something?
It's their land or the county. I can't actually keep it. They have indicated, I'll just be blunt, they've indicated that it may be difficult for us to integrate with what they have. I think right now they just want to get their stuff done, so they don't want to necessarily talk about, modifying anything. But the other challenge, as we've touched on, is the trail is at grade with the purple line basically at the east building. And then the trail has to get higher than the catenary lines that power the train. So it is a dramatic rise back there. And we will freely admit that we have all looked at on our side, before we even got here, we've looked at that and we're like, it's not quite right. We would want to play with it. So I think hearing everything you guys are saying makes a ton of sense. We do think the two areas are connected. We actually kind of liked the fact that they had a separation, as far as they're connected by a really nice trail. The separation kind of makes the two different, which we liked. And we didn't necessarily think that we needed a trail next to a trail, which is kind of what you'd start getting.
How about a park next to a trail?
That's exactly right. That's what we did on the Terrace Park side, and we agree with you. I think the challenge is it's very steep, so you're not going to get a nice. We've kind of, that steep part is where we have not created a connection, honestly, and we're letting the trail be the connection.
Right. No, I understand that thinking. Yeah.
I think one concern I do have is that because, as you're explaining, that there isn't a lot of interaction between the architecture inside and the outside at the terminus of Pearl Street, that it is a very large area.
Yeah.
How do you get people to that place? How do you create that?
It's compounded by the grade difference you have between the trail and the Pearl Street elevation also. That's an awkward relationship there.
Yeah, on our statement, we had a picture of what it, absent this project, what it's going to look like. And you look down Pearl and there's a big masonry wall and that's it. So, yeah, well, I think all of our objectives are the same. How do we start to integrate it?
All your precedents, are sort of European high street kind of precedents for Pearl Street, and those things have an incredible density of retail along them. This is not going to have that. It's going to mostly have glazing of the health club on one side and an entrance to the western lobby on the other side. And absent that, there's not a lot of doors that are sort of onto that. So I think sort of marrying the vision with the reality of the program on Pearl Street is a challenge. And I was wondering if the DAP had additional sort of direction to get that.
I mean, I do feel that if you were to consider that area as an extension of the the park between the central and the east building, to basically encourage people to be able to go there and utilize that as an extended backyard, or however, with additional activation, additional spaces. And I think how inviting is that connection to go through the trail to get there and actually use those spaces. I think it'll help the project a lot to actually see people using those spaces. And it's great that there are quite a few, there is a lot of space to do that. So I think there's a huge opportunity to just sort of extend that idea of park towards that side.
Yes, because right now Pearl Street feels like such a dead end in the current plan. I think if it could wrap around and continue, if you see the whole thing as one circuit, it'll completely change the character back there.
Would it be better to do the landscaping as part of the trail and not as part of the building? So it would be more like a high line at this point, right? So
if it's
you mean lift it, you mean?
Yeah, lifted areas like for people.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean,
that'd be great. Yeah. Are you guys able to massage the shape of the health and wellness? Is that kind of stuck programmatically? I'm just curious. Do you have the ability to manipulate that form?
We are working with a specific group right now. And yes, we've pushed the limit on the lower on the size. They would prefer that.
I see.
Is there any presence of the club on Montgomery? That'll be very obvious.
On Montgomery, the pink at the northwest corner is a shared lobby, but it will have plenty of signage for the club. So it's a club entrance and the residential entrance.
I think that the 3D flyby SketchUp model would be very helpful in terms of massing of the buildings. That makes complete sense. The U shape towards the single family homes, that's better views. That's very logical and that makes sense. The stepped facade. That actually reminds me a lot of Georgetown architecture. Condo that just is being renovated.
Oh, the flour mill.
Flour mill, yeah.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what kind of facade you guys, how you will deal with the facade areas. I like it personally, like the terrace look, but it's very expensive to build, waterproof and all of those terraces. So we just didn't talk a lot about the massing. That makes sense.
I have a, go to the section perspective of. Yeah. I think that, by the way, I think this is a very nice and ambitious project. So,
Yes.
very positive about it. I think
Mhm. Mhm.
this would be wonderful, at this location. Maybe a fairly minor situation here, but, the 50 feet wide by 50 feet tall ratio is kind of the perfect street ratio, 1-to-1 on height to width. And I think it makes it a very attractive and very pedestrian friendly sort of ratio. But, the west building is 1 floor taller than the central building. And I'm just wondering if at this one location where you really, really have a gateway to something, right? You have the whole Pearl gateway to the trail and over to the adjacent neighborhood and all that. Whether, having it the same height at this corner might be something that could, really sort of punch, a moment in the whole Montgomery Street thing where you have, just this very classical, set of gateways across from each other that really sort of accentuate the whole thing rather than slightly off.
And I assume you're suggesting not raising the central building, but lowering the west building?
I think you go either way.
Okay.
I have no problem either way.
1 floor.
Matter of fact, I think it would probably be better if you went up one on the central building.
I think that's a great idea.
Well, and in terms of, I think just some project comps for some of the ideas that are in the county, Pat could probably give you a really nice tour of the Strathmore buildings. The Ravel and the Royale that have this type of terracing with a lot of biophilic elements kind of built into the balconies and landscapes and the design of the spaces between the two buildings. I think that's a really nice project that shows this in practice. And for the connection, second connection, not this connection, I think the 87, our old building has a really nice execution of that, where you have two different massive pedestrian paths through it. I think one of the things to be very mindful about the landscape for the second connection is not to let the utilities and the service entrances kind of diminish the potential for the actual space that you're creating at the end of it. Because it's as much as an access from the trail as it is for the neighborhood to be able to come in and get through the trail. So just that first sort of lack of that connection, it's going to be pretty challenging to exit.
Are you talking about the
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I know we're almost out of time, but I did want to mention that that particular section. What is the width of that? For the mid-block?
41.
41. So it is quite narrow compared to the whole street. So I think that access getting through, just looking at the plan, it feels a little bit like an alleyway. And so I think the treatment of that space would be important to understand what the experience is getting towards the terrace park. Because this one is very inviting, and the idea of creating that gateway, if it is enhanced, I think it would be a really cool feature for the street.
The one is a public street and one is a mid-block connection. And I was actually surprised to see in the design guidelines, the suggestion for mid-block connections, I think was 15 feet wide. So our feeling was, whoa, we're 3 times that. But I think it's
minimum, but
vehicular
yeah,
access.
15 is the minimum, but yeah, especially if this one's gonna integrate vehicles and access, it certainly deserves.
Yeah, I mean, and I realized the dual role that mid block is, our challenge to make sure that it's
Right.
right.
And the tapering of also is gonna help to feel that more open.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think
And also like we have the bridge in between the two buildings.
the actual sort of materiality, I think, within the public realm and how we're kind of using that legibility. And I think that's kind of supported with the architectural massing and the, creating gateway elements as well. So along Montgomery, you'll have these kind of moments that you can see that are clearly defined as the gateway, and then hopefully then you get the visual and physical connections with the kind of materiality that
Sure,
kind of
yeah.
link you down towards the Capitol Coast Trail.
I think I just wasn't seeing a pedestrian way or
Yeah.
some kind of a movement, which is outside of the vehicle, just from
Yeah,
safety
we
standpoint.
had,
David?
we can show that.
I'm sensitive to our time, but I have a few minutes. So I did want to ask a little bit about the massing. I know you're not showing much detail about that, but so I'm the Bethesda resident. Maybe there are others too. You're excluded, but that's my role in the thing. One of the things I perceive in Bethesda is becoming quite jumbled looking in a way. And I think that there's a tendency to sort of make a lot of moves within one building in a way that's resulting in a pretty jumbled looking built environment. And I think that's a struggle for Bethesda right now. And so one of the things I'm very interested in seeing in buildings is that they individually be cohesive. There's this move right now to break down massing by making like one building look like several buildings. And I would like to urge you to resist doing that. One of the things that I notice in these buildings, I feel like, the terraces are great. They're very dynamic and exciting. They won't, be the primary. More people will see this building from along Montgomery, or these buildings from along Montgomery, I think. But one of the things I think that maybe I'm wrong about this, but my perception is that those terraces create a very like horizontal emphasis in the buildings because you sort of see floor, 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 floor. And then when you come around to the front of the buildings, you're showing these sort of towers at the corners and stuff. And those strike me as sort of being somewhat in tension and maybe not very cohesive. Tension can be good and interesting, but I'm not sure in this case that I would see that. And I would sort of encourage you to think about ways to take some of those horizontal cues around the building. And then in terms of I was looking at slides 13 and 26. I noted down, I don't know if you can go to 13. So you got those little like places where the facades are sort of ducking in a little bit. And so the towers, first of all, give more of a vertical emphasis again, which I think fights a little bit with the horizontality that I sort of perceive as being, kind of what the buildings are more about on the back. Think about it as the back. Those little sort of angular are the type of thing that I feel like are, kind of trying to break a facade, but they do it in this very sort of limited way that I think often has very little impact. It's not very dynamic. I realize it's hard to do that without giving up FAR. So I in a more sort of profound way. So I guess I would encourage you to sort of think about other ways to, and sorry, let me jump back. It's those little jogs and stuff in facades that I think is part of what's contributing to this like rather jumbled feel in the overall sort of Bethesda built environment. So I guess I would just encourage you to see if there's a way to sort of think about other ways to treat those facades. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else feels it, but I look and I see that facade sort of on the north side of the central building, west side of the central building, the way it sort of bumps out for that tower just doesn't seem like what that building wants to do at that point.
David, one thing to consider is when you look at the zoning, the heights are different. So with that corner is actually the highest of the entire project.
Okay.
And then the heights step down as you move eastward. So I think
for the next You mean within the same building or just to the east?
Yeah,
building?
no, within the same building.
Right at the.
I would,
Well, that's fine. Again, I guess I'm still, I don't know. I just, I would urge you to think of a way to sort of simplify it and think more about that, how that relates to the back. Because to me, right now, it does look like it's sort of gonna be perceived as multiple buildings. And I don't know, I feel like that's pretty, it ends up being a pretty unsatisfying building often. So.
I think you're right about chaos versus simplicity. And the massing of the building, breaks in the facade will create shadowing that create articulation. But when you compound that by changing materials in those plain breaks, it creates chaos.
Okay.
And so we like to think of buildings as proportions. So I think what you will see as we move forward, first off, these buildings are going to be like sisters, not like, unrelated. And then secondly, the concept of looking at the fabric as a way to tie it together, and not let it be fragmented. So your point's very valid. We don't want this to look chaotic, and hopefully further options we can show you will find some middle ground that achieves what you're talking about. Because
yeah, I like
agree
a lot of chaotic looking buildings, but the problem is like the little like jogs feel like half measures. And they're not, in a way, they're like not chaotic enough to sort of make it interesting, yet they kind of.
I think.
that's a valid point.
I have sawtooth edge, which, I mean, is responding to. And then you have the horizontal lines. So it's almost a rendering situation at this point, because you have that sawtooth plus all the horizontal lines on this model right here starts to make it look a little chaotic. I think if we didn't see the horizontal lines, for instance, I think it would be a little clearer in the massing. That I think this is actually, I think you've done a pretty nice job of actually articulating the mass so that it will be coherent, but it also will give some, so it's just not a relentless, very long wall, which I don't think we want that either.
Yeah, and I particularly agree with the horizontal treatment, tying the fronts with the back, because the back is horizontal. I mean, that's its natural form. So this is a great opportunity to show you our next steps and get further comments.
And I think
I
a
have
lot of
just one
those
other
will
question.
come out
Okay.
at site plan, obviously.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I know it's
Uh-huh.
early. I
Right.
wanted to sort of give you the feedback earlier because I'll probably carry on about the same thing if it looks like this. You don't want to listen to me, giving you a chance. The only other question I had is, there's not a lot you can do about this. The building sort of immediately across the street that's like pulled up super close to the street. It's got this very narrow sidewalk and it's just this like super regrettable facade and probably not going anywhere. I know you don't control that. I guess I was just sort of curious, is there anything that you all have in mind to sort of
Make ours so wonderful that people will be focusing.
well,
on
and other than like getting
south side
people
of
to
the
sort of
street.
ignore it or whatever, I don't know. I just was wondering if there's any
It's
any
bad.
thought you all had about a way to sort of improve. Is there anything you can do with your building that, kind of improves that? I think the fact that you're stepping back a little bit will help from it being feeling kind of too canyon-like, but that building on the other side is just so hostile to.
I mean, our sidewalk is gonna be 15 feet wide, plus we have the bike ramp, the
Yeah.
bike path, and
Yeah.
then we have on-street parking. So our side of the
Yeah.
street will certainly
Yeah.
feel very generous.
Yeah. Okay. Let's
And
go.
the residential entrance.
Yeah, and the residential entrance.
Yeah, that other side is just. It's rough. Okay.
Any other comments from the panel?
I'll just give a couple of high-level massing comments since there've been so many already. I think the sisters/cousins direction is good, not twins, for the east and west buildings. I do think the corner treatments are in contradiction to the horizontal stepping. And I almost wonder if the Pearl and Montgomery corner should step down at the corner, even if you push the density east. Pat, are you stuck on that step on the central building? Because I think the big juxtaposition between the west building and the central building, exaggerated with the tower, makes that inconsistency even greater. So just taking the comment that maybe the corner is a misstatement and maybe it's a miscue for that intersection on the central building, you could lower it or step it down and push the density east, I guess, would be a nice way to kind of terrace down to the Pearl Street extension. And I think you don't have to have the same one-story expression on both east and central, sorry. You could vary those and again, have more cousins than twins or sisters for the treatment, because the consistent one-story stepping on the back, I find a little bit hectic, but I like the gesture and I like the overall direction you're going. So those are just some other thoughts on massing and differentiation as you develop it further.
Yeah, Robert, I'll say again, the west building is constricted because of a deed, so can't go higher
Right, I understand
there.
that, right.
And then the central building, that corner then becomes the only area where we get any height, any significant height, so we didn't want to lose. That was.
And you can't go any further east on the central building, central area? You're stuck.
No, because the allowable height changes at that point.
Right there, I see.
Right there, yes.
And making more MPDs to get additional height doesn't work, given the economics.
Grace, there's no flexibility there for them to shift that? If they step down at the corner, could they shift that center over east?
Let me see if they're in the height incentive. The only way to do it, I think, would be MPDs, but I have to see if you're in the height incentive.
I think
We were actually talking about less. I'm sure you will.
That is for another meeting, sir. We are over time. Let me look it up, Robert, but while I'm doing that, we are at sketch plan. And so this is where the design advisory panel would say, yes, you're on track to meet the minimum. We've given you these comments, come back at site plan with additional information. Or the panel could say, I think that we really need X, Y, and Z before we feel comfortable moving this forward to site plan. Some of the comments that I heard today are really tuned into having a 3D model that would help benefit the understanding of the rear, as well as certain moves to Pearl Street's grade and the public open space in the rear. So I'm not sure where the DAP is feeling.
I think we need another sketch plan.
I think the open space, I think you have to start with the public realm. I know this team is talented and can solve the architecture. I think it's all about the public realm for me, so.
Can I just make one comment? And I hear you. From a timing standpoint, we're eager to get the sketch plan in. Obviously, there's not a requirement to have to go to DAP before filing the sketch plan. I mean, so.
I was going to actually ask if you've already submitted.
No, but our goal is to submit mid-August if possible. I mean, you've given us a lot to think about that we're going to need to consider and go back to the drawing board a bit. But to the extent you want us to come back, it would be in the context of the sketch plan application.
So if your plan is to submit mid-August, you could certainly start the IRC process because that takes time, and then come back to the DAP in September. And I don't think that would really affect your application review. It can catch up.
So site plan will show materials the next meeting. Awesome. Right.
Yes. And have you been to the IAC?
We haven't done, you were our very first stop.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so I think I will get these notes written up and we can target the September DAP to come back for sketch.
That makes sense.
Okay,
Okay,
guys.
thank you,
Thank you all
everyone.
very
We appreciate your.
Thanks,
comments.
everybody.
Thank you, Robert.
Very nice project.
Thanks, Robert.
Very complicated.